Hi, everybody. So I'm Carolyn Elliott.
And this is Laila Bernard.
And you are listening to the Sleepover podcast. We are hanging out in my TV room with little Lulu and with the amazing artist Hannah Johnson, who did our cover art, who's Layla's sister.
And many more exciting projects to come.
Yeah. And
Leo the cat just walked in, so Lulu's excited about that.
Yeah. So tonight we were thinking to talk a little bit about, like, Laila said this awesome thing that I love, which is she's saying that, you know what? Right now, the mythic age is here. We don't have to go back. We're going forward. What we need is not lost in a never recoverable mythic past. The mythic now is here, and it's our job to embody.
Fucking act like it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the myths did not end in the past. You know, the magic didn't die in a previous age. You know, the fairy tales were not written in the long ago. Like, those are eternal stories that are happening always. And when we tune into ourselves as these eternal beings who return ever, ever, ever again to this plane to work it out, we realize that, like, what we really are is these, like, mythic level beings who are doing the ritual of life, like, enacting it. Like, we are the heroes of the mythic story that is being told all the time. And that story didn't end because we're all still here. So obviously the story's not over, everybody. We can't just, like, watch it in reruns and, like, look at the heroes of the past and be like, gee, where are all the heroes? Like, where are all the heroes? They're sitting in the chair watching the movie. Like, well, we got to do it, dude. Like, we can't, like, it's not over. The story is unfolding. And it's actually, like, at a climax right now. Like, I know we'd like to take a break as, like, karmic soul heroes. It's been a rough aeon, but, like, now it's, like, the birthing of a new one. So we can't quit now, everybody. The baby's coming.
Oh, my God. I'm feeling, that's so interesting. As you were saying that, I was feeling like my throat chakra was, like, going woof, 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 like yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, Carolyn. It's coming.
Yeah. So what is one way that you see this playing out, or how do you see people avoiding their mythic dimensions, like your clients?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I can exactly point to how people are avoiding their mythic dimensions. I mean, I think you all know how you do it. You, like, focus a lot on, like, getting a 50-cent raise at your job and, like, you know, getting these, like, little tokens of, like, pathetic achievement in the, like, very limited, very finite game of the society that we live in. We're trying to hook up some cartoons for
trying to give Lulu's pretty excited, trying to give her some Dora so she can chill while we talk. I was thinking maybe we should move into the living room so she can stay in the TV room.
So it's pretty clear. It's like, to me, it's pretty clear how people, like, avoid their mythic selves. Like, you know full well how you're doing that, I think. I think the more interesting thing is, like, how do you begin to believe in your mythic self? And, you know, I think the best way that I found to do that is to, like, tune into what characters from myth, and by myth I mean, like, the sum total of all human creative storytelling, including movies and TV shows that you have recently seen. Like, which characters do you just find yourself being like, oh my God, I love that character. That is the one. Like, for me, it's like Robin Hood. It's like Aladdin. Like, I love that guy so much. And so much of myself coming into, you know, inhabiting my correct role in the great myth of life is to be like, if I'm really, like, turned on by this, like, sneaky little innocent thief character, the diamond in the rough who's, like, stealing bread to feed his little poor neighbors, or, you know, the Robin Hood who's robbing from the rich to feed the poor, like, there must be something about that attraction to that character that means that that character is the role that I am to be playing. Like, you can feel it in yourself the roles that you're meant to be playing because they're the roles that turn you on when you see other people playing them. And like another way that I see people being more and more able to tune into their role as a like participant in the great ongoing ritual that is life is, you know, reading things like fairy tales, reading things like myths, watching movies as though they are, you know, ancient teachings telling you something about reality, and, you know, deciding like to see your own life's drama as these beautiful, poetic, creative, mythic stories that you are like lucky enough to get to be a character in, even if that character is the fucking villain. You know, I mean, that's like so much of what EK has opened up for me is this like permission. You know, there's so many things that we want to do in life and we talk ourselves out of it by being like, well, people are just going to be so mad at me and like people are going to think I'm the worst and like it's just going to, everyone is going to hate me. And when you're like, you know, stuck in the non-mythic version, the egoic, moralic version of looking at reality, then you're like, well, obviously I don't want to do that because that's wrong. But when you're looking at it from like the co-creator of the mythic story, you're like, well, God, you know, all these myths like include a villain. There's always a villain in the story.
Nothing happens without the villain. What the fuck would happen? What would the Little Mermaid be without Ursula, everybody?
Precisely. Like if the Wicked Witch had not given Snow White the apple, then like we wouldn't be talking about Snow White. So like the villain is obviously an integral part of the story. And who are you to be so like rude as to refuse to play the role that like needs to be played in the great drama? Like somebody's got to play the role.
I love that, Laila. So what this is reminding me of is, and I write about this in my course Thrill, when I was first beginning to have a online persona, it was like I knew that there were parts of myself that I didn't know how to show, that I didn't know how to like let out. And one of the first things that I did was exactly what you're saying. Like think about the characters who really touched me. I think at the time actually I was trying to write a novel too, and I was reading this book called like Secrets of Page Turner blockbuster novels. And it was talking about that what all of the best-selling, biggest, you know, novels that get turned into the biggest movies of the 20th century have in common is protagonists who want something really bad and will do whatever the fuck it takes to get it. Not like protagonists who are conflicted, like, I don't know, should I want this thing? Does that make me a narcissist? I don't know. Maybe I should really think about how it would affect other people if I go after this thing.
Right, not a movie.
Not doing that. And so I was like, whoa, I started thinking about it and thinking about, you know, very politically incorrect film, but Gone with the Wind was one of my favorite books as a kid. And Scarlett O'Hara, I mean, there's a villainous streak in her. She fucks up the lives of a lot of people.
As God is my witness, if I have to lie or kill, steal or cheat or kill, I will never go hungry again.
And I actually had a moment like that. It wasn't about going hungry. It was about I had been waiting for like a man to rescue me, and I had this boyfriend who was really hot, and we had hot sex, and I was like semi-homeless, and one night I didn't have a place to stay, so I was like, hey, can I just like crash at your place? And he was like, no. I was like, no, man, I have nowhere else to go. Come on, you're my boyfriend. Like, and he let me in his house. And I learned that he was a super epic hoarder. And slept in his super epic hoarder house. And my parents are epic hoarders. And I had this moment where I was like, with God as my witness, I will never be homeless again. I will never try to depend on a man or depend on anybody else. I will fucking make my nice non-hoarder house happen. Right. And
then you bit a potato. And you threw it on the ground. And that was the magical spell that made it all happen, everyone. That's how it happened.
Yeah, it's like getting to that like bedrock place of like desire and like getting to this like guttural place of like, I'm gonna do it. And like, not because it's right, not because it's good, but because I fucking want to do it.
Well, yeah, and like there are so many, like, I mean, I was talking about this with my sister in the car, like, and we were talking about this in the last episode, how I, left my children with their loving co-parents and community in their home where they live and moved here to like do my thing and follow my dream. And there were months before I made that decision where I would like sit like in the bathtub, like weighing the things in my hand and like asking myself the difficult question of like, okay, Laila, if you had to choose between never pursuing your dream, and like this is obviously an exaggerated choice, but like this is kind of how the like mind talks to you. Like if I had to choose between like the pursuit of everything that's important to me in my dreams and like the hottest, amazing thing that I could imagine and never seeing my family again, I was like, wow, one of these hands is a lot hotter than the other. Like there's one hand that I feel like I could let go. Honestly, I could let go of it. And just like feeling into that, like the truth of that and being like, oh, well, that's a heroic dilemma right there. And instead of like cowering away from it and trying to be like, well, maybe I can just like shoot. I mean, like Taoism would say, like the middle path would say, like maybe you can shoot the middle. But there's like a way in which like that's not really shooting the middle. Because if your actual desire is in one direction, that's your channel. That is your middle. And anything that you're like pulling off to the side for, that's not the middle. And I guess why I'm bringing it up in the context of this conversation is that like sometimes life presents us with those like fucking intense like Indiana Jones moments of like, choose the grail. Which grail is it? And you're like, oh my God, I have to choose a grail. And like life's like, yes, bitch, choose wisely. And like when we don't think of ourselves as inhabiting our lives as the heroes of a mythic adventure, we like thrash around and whine and cry and be like, I don't want to choose, someone choose for me, like please, like why do I have to choose? But when we inhabit ourselves as like her heroes, we're like, oh, all right, I've arrived at the hero's momentous choice where, all right, good thing I cultivated this wisdom so that now I can choose wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say a little bit more about like my little trifecta of heroes that got me started into
Scarlett O'Hara,
and then the other one, so greedy, problematic bitch, yes. And then I was so concerned at first about like people calling me a charlatan, because what credentials did I have to prove my spiritual leadership?
What Hogwarts University had given you a doctorate, Carolyn?
None. And I was really uptight about that. And I was really inspired by Madame Blavatsky, who wrote Isis Unveiled and kicked off Theosophy, the Theosophical Society. She was a badass bitch, and she was constantly making up stories about herself. Who knows if they're true? They can't be proved. She said she rode like bareback on a horse across the Russian steppes. Like, okay. Sure, Helena, I guess. And she was in service to a truth, and she was not shy about creating a world around her of stories and giving people experiences, seances. Like, she understood that people need some smoke and mirrors to get lubed up to actually open their, astral perception. So she would like whatever, table knocking machines, mysterious, she would
gases
have actors
coming, and yeah,
she would do all that, and she was a fucking genuinely intense psychic also.
Right, like it's like she was a genius of lived creative nonfiction, where it's like, tell the truth, tell it slant, but sometimes that's the truer truth.
Yes. And And my other great inspiration along those lines is Queen Elizabeth I, who I think about a lot. I think about Queen Elizabeth almost as much as I think about Jesus. I'm really into both of them. And, Queen Elizabeth, she started out in a hard spot, right? She saw her mother beheaded by her father. She experienced all sorts of other horrors in her childhood, was assaulted by her caretakers and probably raped and everything. And somehow she decided, I'm still going to be queen, though. And so she had her little small cadre of supporters, and she was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. There's going to be giant portraits of me made as the fairy queen, who is like the biggest mythic feminine symbol in England. And we're going to mix that up with the Virgin Mary. And that way we should really get a grip on people's hearts and minds. We're going to have those portraits.
Talk about knowing the power of the mythic. I mean, You learned from the queen.
Yes. And
she's like, I'm the fairy queen and Virgin Mary, so don't forget it. That's who you're looking at when you see this picture.
Yeah, and she did this amazing innovation where at the time it was common to address the monarch, formally, but not super elaborately. But Elizabeth made it a rule that people in her court could only address her in the language of courtly love. So rather than saying, Your Highness, here are the tax reports from Essex, would you please look them over? Somebody would have to approach her and say, oh, beloved one, who causes the stars to shine, oh, she who thrills my heart like nothing else, oh, poetry. They would have to, address her with poetry.
Would it please you to lay your divine eye upon your illustrious kingdom's tax returns?
Yes. Exactly.
She required massive seduction of herself.
Yes. And what I found so amazing, what I still think about that all the time, is it's language creates worlds, creates reality.
In the beginning was the word.
And so when you're... So at first, I'm sure everybody was just like, all right, well, we're just going along with it because she said...
This psycho's on a head trip.
But eventually, people got really into it and started to see themselves in a more poetical light and started to, she was such a great sponsor of the arts and Shakespeare and everything, that this whole culture bloomed around her of poetry, of, people really shining. And she controlled England without a police force. There was just a spy force. So the Queen's spies were out in the taverns. They were paying attention, listening for anybody who was trying to evade taxes or assassinate the Queen. Everything else, whatevs. Sure.
Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, as long as you're paying me for the right to live in my beautiful kingdom where you get to do what you want.
Yeah, and if you murder your neighbor, probably your neighbor's family is going to come murder you, and that's
karma.
Breaks.
That's karma, baby. That's just how it works.
Yeah. And I think about that, and I'm like, what a way to rule the country. I mean, what a sane way to go about it. And of course, then she went on to conquer most of the world, and she did it through magic. She had John Dee, the greatest cryptographer and astrologer and polymath of the time, do magic spells to sink the Spanish Armada. I could go on about that for a long time because I have such admiration for that working. But so I took those all three together and I was like, yeah, that's me.
That's basically it. Describe yourself in 3 images. Scarlett O'Hara meets Madame Blavatsky meets Queen Elizabeth. That's Carolyn Elliott.
Yeah. And since then, I feel like it has I feel like I have not talked about as much about the mythic dimension because I've been feeling like my myth has grown and shifted and I haven't known how to speak about it as much. But I can tell you the way that it grew and shifted is that I started doing the practices of the Golden Dawn that we talk about, the LBRP and the Middle Pillar. and I started having dreams that were taking me against my conscious will very deeply into the stream of Crowleyana. And that is now what's coming through me. I mean, I guess it actually is kind of obvious what mythic thing is coming through me now is, the Babylon current and all of that.
Well, you're like tapping, like as you gave yourself permission to live into these like more, human, historical, like human-sized. Queen Elizabeth is maybe like the largest one, and then Madame Blavatsky, and then like Scarlett O'Hara is a very human character. Like she's a human-sized person with a human-sized drama. As you gave yourself permission to inhabit the like mythic archetypes that were human-sized, that you were big enough to carry then those archetypes keep opening up deeper into like the fractal core of who they really are. And behind all of us are just the gods and the goddesses. That's what we all are.
I love it. So something that's been happening to me lately is, so I like to say things like, oh, well, the gods sent me David, my husband. What can I do?
What can I do? I mean, it's just...
And one day I was thinking that to myself. I was like, oh, the gods. And I was like, oh, the gods who are the fractal holographic parts of my psyche that, due to my magical work, now show up in my dreams and talk to me quite directly, and like I know that they are me, and it's like the will of the gods is my larger will.
Yeah, right. It's like when you say like the gods brought me this, you're also covertly admitting like I did this to myself. It was me. Actually.
And what a potent alchemical thing to do to myself it is. I love David very much.
We all love David very much. Shout out to David.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. And I love what you were saying about, the time is now, because I have had many conversations with magical people who, and I think it's understandable given all the trauma, that have kind of almost like a fantasy about like, oh, let's have a commune, let's return to simpler ways, let's be more like tribal people, and like really have this longing in their hearts for this sort of Eden situation. And I have that longing too, but I see it as something that includes everything.
It's the return to the true home, which is the mythic beyond. Like, like in the great myth, The Lord of the Rings, at the end, they all get in the boat and they all sail across the sea to the land of the immortal ones, the elves. And like, truly, that is where we all come from, is the land of the immortal ones. And at the end of this great odyssey, trying to save the ring from falling into the wrong hands, we too will return to the great land beyond the sea, only to get right back on the boat and come back and do more adventures, because that's just what we love. But like that, like all those homecoming myths, Joseph Campbell talks so beautifully about this in his work about, the myths that all cultures share, that we all share these myths of homecoming, but home isn't behind us. Like we're coming home. We're not going home. Like we're not returning to a place that we left, that we lost. Like we were set here, and everything that has happened from then to now has been our homecoming this whole time. Like I was recently talking with a beloved client of mine who, is looking for community and return to, and it's beautiful. Like we are in a situation where like we should be thinking about how everyone can eat. We should be thinking about how we can be beautifully integrated with everything. Like it's not wrong. But she said something to me that I think is probably lodged in a lot of people's minds, that like, oh yeah, in like the distant prehistoric past, like people weren't messed up the way that we're messed up now. And I was like, oh, but of course they were, because look at all the shit that happened. Like, if people didn't have the trauma in them, then we wouldn't have had to play it out so graphically and make it so conscious. Yeah. Like, all of the stuff that happened over the last, couple, 2, 3, 5,000 years was latent in the deep unconscious of our early humanity. And we've had to just do the weird, fucked up, disturbing shadow work of enacting all of that weird stuff that was in us, and we're working it out. That's what we've been doing. It's been a lot, you guys. Like, you've been to therapy. You know what it's like to have a dark night of the soul. Like, we've been alive for the last 150 years. Like, it's one of those times. Like, compassion for our collective persona. We're gonna make it.
Yeah.
Like, we can know that there's a light at the end of this tunnel, because you know personally that, like, it's always darkest before the dawn, and, like, sometimes you have to have a mental breakdown before you have a mental breakthrough. And doesn't it seem like collectively, like, that's where we're at?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, breaking through. And just as you were saying that, something flashed into my mind that I had never thought of before, which I've spent a lot of time thinking about, like, humans traumatizing each other and, like, this demon of empire and where did it come from. And it just flashed into my mind that, like, oh yeah, for all of those people living those idyllic tribal lives, nature could also be traumatizing. There could be a plague, there could be a storm, there could be a drought, right? All
you
sorts
could get
of things.
bitten by something that poisons you. You could...
Right. So I'm seeing now that, like, this sort of this demoniacal, like, urge to conquer and control and quantify and measure, right, comes from that. I mean, this is kind of obvious now that I'm saying it, but it comes from that urge to have some control over nature, to conquer and to avoid the traumas that can come from just being swept in her bloody claws.
In the stream, yeah.
Yeah, my metaphors.
Yeah, we're mixing them up.
Mixing them around. But,
that's the best way, Carolyn.
But so, and thinking about that, like, it makes sense, in a way, all of patriarchy, because huge resentment against the feminine. Huge resentment.
Why do you guys get to make more humans? Why do you guys just get naturally initiated by your bodies? Why does your body do these cool things with the moon?
Well, and huge resentment against Mother Earth herself, who will indeed sometimes send you locusts,
right,
and send you tsunamis, and,
right, just utterly devour you.
Yeah, and that certainly tons of people, I'm sure, took that with deep spiritual equanimity, and then some other people were like, "No, I'm really fucked up by that. I really want to stop it. I really want to control it. I really want heating and air conditioning.
Right. I want my children to live. I want my children to live."
Yeah, and that I love how you so deeply summed up, like, that it's not that there's just sort of like a handful of uniquely evil people pulling the strings. It's like this very human desire to want your children to live that caused us to do all of these atrocities to others in the competition for resources and the struggle for survival. And just the way that because of the mind coming online in the way that it has, and the the verbal thought that can get so into its own far out places,
visionary, psychedelic, imaginal realms,
and like just the weird persuasiveness of the mind's logic.
Mercury is a trickster.
Right.
Mercury tells nothing but lies. He deals only in lies.
Mm-hmm. And how, so, like, we've been believing and listening to these lies of the mind and believing that we can...
I mean, basically collectively driving ourselves insane. Mm-hmm. And it's time... I mean, that's, like, where we're at as a collective human persona, is, like, reckoning with... We've really been driving ourselves nuts here. Like, we've been harming ourselves. Like, this has been self-harm. I mean, that's really, like... we're going to talk about the new age. Like, that's really what the new age consciousness shift that's asking to happen is like, we've been in the age of, like, us and them, and how do I get from them to me, and la la la. And we've been seeing this harm as, like, harm that's being done to us by others, or that we are doing to others, and that we need to atone for to the others and do some kind of work to make it up to the others. And in the new aeon, like, we come to realize, like, it has been to ourselves and to ourselves only. Like, it is all to us. Like, it's our collective pain. Even if we're the doers of it, we do it to ourselves.
Right. And that it's not right. Exactly. Because there's enough of us now. There's, like, over 8 billion of us that we've started to see, like, it's not actually possible to just take something from somewhere else or put something and have it disappear.
Like the whole like landfill like garbage crisis that the world is in, that we're all like becoming aware of because China is no longer buying the world's garbage. We're all like, oh, there is nowhere else. There's only here. There is nobody who will take my pain from me, who will take my garbage from me. When I throw my garbage over there, I'm really just throwing it on myself. Right. Damn it.
And there is no violence that I can do to somebody else or some other group of people that I won't also have to experience in the form of weird traumas that come back and reverberate and go back and forth and go
everywhere. It's just it's an infinite hall of mirror of trauma when we see it that way. But like once we realize that like I've been hurting myself, it's been us. Like when we wake up to our collective self and can see that like we have been a demented person hurting ourselves in the solitary confinement of space, then we might wake up to the compassion that like it's not that some of us are evil and some of us are virtuous. Like we're just one very confused being doing weird stuff to itself. Wow. Like, and that's the beginning of consciousness. Like that's the beginning of it. Like I feel like that's like really the sort of characteristic of this new dawning.
Yeah, I heartily agree. And,
I mean, I feel like we're like getting off on like an amazing tangent of like the historical mythological times that we're living in. But we did start talking about how individual humans can do their amazing work of like participating mythically as their own mythic characters.
I know what I was thinking about. Yeah. You mentioned Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
And that got me thinking about somewhere in some Joseph Campbell book, I think it might be Thou Art That, he talks about re-entering Eden and how Eden is guarded by two cherubim, and it's hope and fear. And they have these flaming swords, and in order to enter the garden, you have to be able to walk between them without being, attached or
distracted, right?
By either of them. And that, and also that our culture for a long time, and in part due to wonderful Mr. Campbell, has been really perseverating on the hero's journey. And the hero's journey, as Campbell outlined it, and as it can be seen in many examples, is all about, like, usually some dude, could be a plucky young woman, but wakes up one day and is sort of dissatisfied with their little life and meets somebody who gives them a mission, and they accept the mission, and they go out into the world and encounter all these obstacles and go through all these journeys in order to win something that they can bring back for their people. And so, yes, definitely that's cool, and that's the thing. And also, in my personal life experience, what happened for me was what I'd like to consider the heroine's journey, or the underworld journey, which is you're just minding your own business. You don't really want anything to change. You're not trying to, you're just trying to be cool. And then one day, like the ground falls out from underneath you. You are sucked down unwittingly.
Plunged to the pits of hell.
Into some kind of netherworld. For me, I've been to a number of netherworlds. I've been in heroin addict netherworld. I've been in suicidal depression netherworlds. And all of those netherworlds, I was not looking for them. I just fell into them like Alice down the rabbit hole. And we have a handful of heroine journey stories in our pop culture. Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy's she has longing, but nobody gives her a mission. She just gets caught up in a freaky tornado.
And then she has to figure the mission out. She's just like, where even the fuck am I?
Accused of murder,
right.
Celebrated for murder,
right.
Lands kills the witch. Now she's got to get back home. And also, What's the other one? I don't know. The other one is escaping me right now. But the point being is, I think this is the experience perhaps of a lot of people of all genders, is that they don't have a specific hero's quest experience that gets them into the mythic realm. They just get
right, sucked into
in.
the mythic realm.
Well, not pop culture, but classically, Pluto and Persephone. Persephone is just hanging out, picking some flowers, kidnapped and raped into the underworld. And so I really like to dwell on giving more celebration and focus to that, and sending out the message for anybody listening out there. If you're in a struggling place right now, which is very understandable, the world being as it is, perhaps you are on an underworld journey, a heroine's journey, where you're, like Alice down the rabbit hole, you're dropped into a topsy-turvy situation where everybody seems to expect weird things from you, and you don't understand the rules, and you don't understand what you're supposed to do or get or go to.
Well, and just like Alice is dropped into this confusing world where she's like it's not clear what she's supposed to be. Nobody seems to understand what she is. The caterpillar asked her the question, who are you? And that is the question to ask yourself when you are in the heroine's position of like, what the fuck is going on? The world around you is possibly asking you to be someone, and hints of who you might be might come to you through these mythic tales and these heroes and heroines who had quote unquote extraordinary powers that are also yours, that the circumstances are asking you to become.
Yes, and I love that. I love the caterpillar's question, and I love what that connects to for me is thinking about the way that trauma, one of the signature things that it does is disrupts identity and disrupts, our ability to feel like a coherent, unitive thing. And the painful gift in that is it's like being forced to find a larger context to answer the caterpillar's question. Who are you?
Right.
Well,
given that just happened to you, who are you now? And you could choose to be ruined, or you could choose to be invited to become the kind of person who takes that in and like turns it into magic.
Exactly. And I feel like, ultimately the larger context, I love how you the way that you put that for me about how I was relating to these more human-sized things, and that eventually like led me into like the goddess.
That's how I got to be hanging out with the devil, truly, because my mythic heroes are all like, okay, there's Robin Hood, and okay, Robin Hood and Maid Marian, I feel like they're a pair, but like, one of my pop culture mythic heroes is Frank Abagnale. Actually, he's a historical person, played by Leonardo DiCaprio in the amazing movie Catch Me If You Can. He is definitely up there in like pop culture heroes for me. One of my other mythic characters is Lyra Balakwa from the His Dark Materials series, who is just like a lying, sneaking do-gooder who can't help herself but just like know the truth and say the truth crooked and like sneak her way into saving the world. And I feel like those trickster archetypes opened up for me into like the ultimate trickster. Like they revealed themselves as the like benevolent, smiling devil who I now just lovingly serve with all my heart.
I adore that about you, Laila, and I learn so much about that from you because, I've repeatedly gotten into these situations with very trickstery magic men. And, right, we know that it's all animus projections, and it's all, and so I've had to be like, I'm gradually really starting to accept and integrate like, oh, I'm a crazy ass trickster
magician.
Too.
Right.
Yeah. And what's funny about that, is, in a weird way, I think, the fact that our culture has the primary archetype of trickster is the devil who's given a masculine spin. Mm-hmm. And right, like this idea that was common currency for a long time that women aren't funny, and like all this like weird stuff that prevented me from understanding like, Yeah, the trickster is totally all genders and all forms. She's a shape-shifting motherfucker. Okay?
She's a trickster. She's the Joker in the pack. She can be anything she wants to be. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to bring up, like, my mythic beings, mostly because, like, as I was hearing you talk about your mythic beings, like, your mythic beings are fucking badass. Like, you're talking about being a queen and, like, Madame Blavatsky, who's, like, starting a fucking movement. And, like, that is grand. Like, obviously, I mean, all mythic creatures are grand. The lowliest of mythic creatures is grand, like, because they are myths, not humans. But I just wanted to, like, really highlight that, like, your mythic current might not be a, like, monarch, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Your mythic current might be a, like, person, like Frank Abagnale never wanted anyone to know his real name because he was a con artist who didn't really exist and wanted to just snake, never be found, never be caught, never be known. And that's also a legitimate mythic character to be. Mm-hmm. So, like, there isn't, in these myths, you don't have to want to just be the princess, or you don't have to want to just be the hero. Like, maybe you want to be the, like, bog wizard who, like, the other heroes come to get the mythic toad that they have to lick in order to, like, break the curse. Like, maybe you are that one. And that is also fucking mythic and epic. Like, there's all different kinds of mythic tones that we can inhabit. And, like, I think one of the shames that people sometimes encounter is they're like, well, I don't know if I'm, like, the coolest mythic character. Like, I don't know if I'm, like, the main character of the mythic story. It's like all the mythic characters are main characters.
They all have their own spin-off series.
Exactly. They all have their... Exactly.
Like, yes, maybe you are Bob Odenkirk. And... like...
Oh, exactly. Like, okay, you should also know that Better Call Saul, like, Saul Goodman from the Breaking Bad series is definitely one of my pop culture, like, for sure he's in there. Like, Frank Abagnale, Lyra Belacqua, and Saul Goodman are probably the Layla. But yeah, so exactly, like, he started out as a side character on Breaking Bad, but then, like, he was so fucking awesome, they made Better Call Saul. Like, we all get our own show. We're all the stars of our own show. And so you don't have to worry about whether you're the, like... the big one. Like, you are the big one in whatever role makes you hot to play.
Yeah. And that's, the shape, whatever role makes you hot to play. I love that. Because truly, like, it is not a veil of tears, but a veil of soul making. And we do actually get to choose the role that we inhabit. And after we choose it, this is one of my favorite books is Finite and Infinite Games.
Oh God, that book. If you haven't read it, Finite and Infinite Games, please, everyone. Yes. You should know.
Yes. And, in that book, the author James P. Karst talks about how lots of people get caught up in playing these finite games of, like, let me see how much money I can make.
Let me get the prize. I want to be the winner of a prize.
Mm-hmm. But actually, all finite games are happening within the infinite game. And the point of the infinite game is just to
keep playing,
get more people playing, keep the game going.
The only thing that's against the rules of the infinite game is to just try and stop others from playing the infinite game.
Right. And
that's it.
Yeah, exactly. And learning about sort of like the only crime is collision in Crowley terms. Yeah, and when I read that book, I thought about how at recess at school, teachers would be like trying to get me to play dodgeball or whatever, these finite games. And all I ever wanted to do was play pretend. I wanted to enroll as many people as I could in a game of actually... Perhaps unsurprisingly, I like to play witches. I like to have everybody go collect different flowers and twigs and put them in a cauldron and stir them up and,
make a potion, as you do.
But playing pretend, right? There's no winner of playing pretend.
No.
But it's fucking way more fun than dodgeball.
Yeah. I mean, like, playing pretend is literally what we're all doing.
And
so, like, it's the game. Like, that's why play is so important to children, because... that's what you're going to do for the rest of existence, is just role play some different things. Like, you're going to get your little kitchen set out. You're going to get your little dolly set out. You're going to go to school. Like, we're all just going to play those roles.
Yeah.
You know, Carolyn, when you were talking just now about like the veil of, you know, soul making, it made me really like consider this like maybe seeming paradox. Maybe it's not quite a paradox, but it's like kind of the funny joke, you know, like I love the Joker. Like, you know, you it's not about discovering yourself. It's about making yourself. And yet there is a way in which making yourself is done through discovery. And you know what to discover. Like, you know what's wanting to be discovered by you by knowing what you want to discover. Yeah. Like that's literally it. Like the only, like the community, like the way that the way that the magnet of evolution in the universe works is that like what you want to become wants you to become it.
I feel like I want to slow down on this theme because this is a really big, beautiful thing. So just to repeat what I heard you say, Laila, that our longing for what the unknown, the flavor of the unknown that's calling to us, that we're like reaching into towards the mystery of it, like let me find out, let me merge with this, let me go into this, is also pulling us.
Well, it feels like a pull, does it not? Like, doesn't it feel like a pull? Like longing, like weirdly, it pushes us forward towards the thing that we want. But when you really sense into it, doesn't it feel like something outside of you is drawing you forward? Like, that's because it is. That's because your longing is the like receptive pole. Your heart is the receptive pole of the magnet to the thing that loves it back. Like it's always a magnet. It's always two poles. Like love. I mean, God, this is like my nerd self, like would love to write a course about like the magnetic nature, the electromagnetic nature of love, which always requires a pole. So like the lover has a beloved, and the beloved's lover is also its beloved. Like they're just, you can't, when you cut a magnet in half, it just turns into two magnets. Like you can't separate those poles from each other. The thing that you wants you. That I really believe that that's just how it works. And, you know, I'm sure there are many people who are like, well, there's somebody that I'm in love with who just isn't, like, who just doesn't see me and doesn't notice me. You're not responsible for them being aware of that. You're not responsible for them knowing how to do that. You can just rest in the fact that you're not crazy. There's polarity happening in the whole world. Like the thing that wants to be made through us is the thing that we want to make. Like wanting is the way that evolution communicates in the present. You know what I'm saying? Like love is the evolutionary force.
Yeah. It's sort of like almost like it's a precognition of the fulfillment.
Dude, I know you hate these movies, Carolyn. You hate these like long, slow, boring space movies. But that's basically what Interstellar is about. Is that like love it's like a magnetic force, electromagnetic force that transcends time. Like it can like, and our longings for what we are to become and like these future visions are like the thing in the future attached to the other side of the magnet in the now in your heart. And they're like, you feel the pull of the future thing that you love, like in your heart now, because love is a force that acts through time because it's evolutionary. We can't evolve without time. Like time is the medium of evolution.
And we can't evolve without desire. I mean, fucking is the engine.
Well, and like love and desire, like, I mean, really, are they different? Like, really, are they different?
Really?
Like,
yeah, right? Exactly.
You know, I mean, it seems like desire is like focalized love.
I love the honesty of Spanish, right? Te quiero. I want you.
I want you.
Yeah, I love you.
I want you. I want that. It's just become very clear to me that, yeah, like, I mean, I like what I just said. I'm surprised by my own genius. Like, time is the medium in which evolution unfolds, and love is the force that pulls us in the evolutionary direction through the evolutionary medium. You heard it here first, folks. This is now a nerdy metaphysical podcast too, so
1000%. And I just want to praise the deep classic depths of Laila's Hermeticism, because there's a famous book called Initiation into Hermeticism by Franz Bardon that's like notoriously difficult to get through, like the first chapter, like the exercise, you're supposed to do it in order. And anyways, but it's all about electricity and magnetism, and how, you know, we come to operate those in the body and feel them and be in touch with them. And I never got on that train. Never got on that train, but because, you know, I don't know, science textbooks are dry. But you, Laila, you are fucking hot. You're super sexy, and when you say it, I feel it. I'm like, yeah.
Well, I guess I went to engineering school for a reason, so that I could be hot and sexy to my magician friend. That was all worth it. Maybe I'll have to write the primer to that book.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe I should read that book and then be like, all right, bitches, you didn't take physics. You were all sleeping in physics class. I know, because I did your homework for you. So here's what you need to know in order to understand this book.
That would be really helpful.
Carolyn's like, oh, maybe I'll read that. Anyway, teaser, if you like the idea, let me know.
Yeah, so I guess maybe just to sort of conclude talking about people in their mythic dimensions is like there's one thing that I like to think about in the playing of the finite game is that you can still play those finite games. You can just make them infinite by adding aesthetic flourishes to them, or by, you know, you feel the freedom in it. So like if somebody is playing I'm playing a game where I want to make a lot of money, and I can ask myself, like, what would be the weird unexpected thing here? What would be the, you know, like, it doesn't have to be played like with a kind of single determined, it can be played with a sense of expansiveness and a sense of possibility, and that just opens it up.
I mean, Carolyn, you're not a video game nerd either, so I'll just use a video game nerd metaphor. Like, this winter, I was having my Jubilee where I was just indulging in a lot of cannabis and playing a lot of Zelda. And, you know, it's just like Zelda, where, like, yes, you're on a larger quest, but there's, like, different dungeons that you have to go through that are part of the larger quest, and you shouldn't forget the larger quest and get lost in a dungeon that maybe doesn't serve your larger quest. And sometimes maybe you just go on, like, a side quest where you're, like, finding a ribbon for your friend's hair. And maybe sometimes you just go to the side quest where you go fishing in the pond. Like, all of these little side quests have their own little prizes that we win. Those are all the little finite games within the larger context of the big mission, which is like, who am I gonna be?
So I have two things to express. One, fun synchronicity. You know who also illustrates deep principles with references to Zelda is our mutual friend, Michael Smith.
Shout out to Michael Smith. I know he's my brother. He is my spiritual brother. We cannot deny it.
Just yesterday, he was telling me about how he levels up in playing Zelda by killing a whole ton of squirrels. Just like he just like does the easy thing that like levels up until when he faces a big boss, he's just killed so many squirrels that the big
Okay, I want to give a better metaphor for like what's going on in Zelda when you level up. So like in Zelda, when you level up, you get more hearts in your life bar. Like you start out when you're a little Link and you only have 3 little hearts, and so if you take too much damage, it's easy to kill you. But as you go around and do bigger, scarier adventures and like larger risk things, you get more hearts. Your heart bar grows larger. So then when you take hits, it's harder to kill you. And as you get stronger and more powerful, you just get more and more hearts. Mm-hmm. And really, like, that is how we all level up in life, is by doing scary shit and getting, using our courage, our courageous hearts, and like expanding them by showing ourselves that like, yeah, I can kill that scary boss. Yeah, I can have that awful conversation with my partner. Yeah, I can tell that person in my life that isn't nice to me to just go to hell. Yeah, I can publish my work on the internet. Yeah, and like those are all the little bits of hearts that we collect to level up in our own RPG game called Our Adventures of whatever your name is and whoever character you're being, you're just growing your heart bar. And then like, and just like in the video game, as you grow more hearts and do more courageous things, it's harder to kill your courage because stuff comes at you and you're like, you know, I got a lot of heart. I'm good. Like my heart's full.
Yeah, I think that's what Michael was trying to tell me, but I like the way you put it. And it's like, so then the other thing that I wanted to express was, and that was so gorgeous, was that everybody, just tenderly, vulnerably from my heart, I just want to say that I just really want all of us, everybody listening, everybody here, to be just those big mythic weirdos, because it's sexy. I mean, I write fanfic about my friends. I don't show it to anybody usually, but I'm like, it's like I'm sitting like thinking about, you know, my favorite characters, and I just want to imagine their different things and like write little side stories for them. And basically the reason that I'm doing this whole mystery school and podcast is so that I can get a fanfic community going to share my work with.
So you guys can meet the characters that Carolyn likes to think about.
and then you can think about them too and write stories, and we can...
I feel like because I just love to exalt the terrible so much, Carolyn, like I just really want to say that like a mythic character that's very pathetic that just struck into my mind was like the little matchstick girl. And like what a mythic hero the little matchstick girl is. And so I know that I have been at points in my life where like the most mythic character that I feel like I can habit is like a little matchstick girl type archetype of just like, I have nothing and I'm just gonna like keep myself warm on the like dreams. And like, even if in those darkest moments, I can remember that like I am actually a character in a story that moves everyone who reads it to tears, then I can appreciate the beauty of even that role. And that is the power of myth. That is how living a mythic life can like truly give us salvation from whatever is happening.
That's reminding me of how in grad school I lived in this apartment that the wind literally whistled through, and I would like sit there and this song from My Fair Lady, which was like, all I want is a room somewhere warm and safe from the cold night air. Would play in my mind.
Exactly. And like, that's mythical, Carolyn. Yeah. That's why you were able to take yourself from the myth of the little matchstick girl freezing in your apartment to I am Queen Elizabeth. Because you're like, it's all just on a continuum of mythological characters. So...
yeah, well, thank you for listening, everybody. This has been Sleepover Podcast. Please,
with Carolyn and Laila.
With Carolyn and Laila and our special live audience of Hannah and Lulu and Leo. And please subscribe, review, tell your friends, share on Instagram. Let's get way more people into this fanfic community.
Yeah, let's start writing amazing myths.
Yeah.
Yeah.